that's fine.
Works for you? Okay, good. But Sarah Moa is going to do something on barriers facing individual criminal records on Monday. The 4th Annual Legislative Forum for American Indian Issues. I believe all the tribal chairmen, maybe missing one only, are going to be here on Monday. That's become kind of an annual ritual, and it's a pretty big deal to have them all here at the Capitol at the same time. Senator Bach is going to be in business, industry, and jobs. He and Metzen will be talking about the jobs proposal on Monday. Scheid chemotherapy treatment on Monday in her committee. Senator Foby's got a bill on explosive growth school districts, how to deal with that. There'll be an LAC meeting regarding the Met Council's $200 million expenditure on Central Corridor on Tuesday. Senator Pappas, electronic billboards apparently has become a hot topic, and Senator Pappas's bill on that will be on Tuesday. Senator Dahl has a bill, DAHL, on closing a loophole in payday lending. That'll be Wednesday. And then Senator DOLL Dahl has a proposal for green buildings and sustainable design area he's been working in. That's on Thursday. And then all week next week, all the budget divisions will be working on the budget. The governor has asked for a comprehensive balanced budget solution in his veto message. I would just suggest that he has not proposed one, and I think it would be helpful if he would. The governor's budget proposal, and this is, I'm sure there'll be some working on this, but this is where we're at based on his numbers. Only about $700 million in budget cuts, actually. So he is not cutting $1.2 billion, and $120 million in shifts and transfers out of other funds. And then, of course, you all know about the $387 million spending from the federal government that he's using to balance his budget. So the first point the only point I really want to make today is that the governor has been unable to balance the budget through cuts alone. He needs to show us that, I think, so that we have a direction. And it's important for him to provide as he has used in his own letter now, a comprehensive balanced budget solution. And he has not done that. So we'll open it up to questions. Senator Berglund is obviously here to, there's also a sheet on this from the department on this $120 million figure. I think you've got that, or Gary will be sending it to you. And Senator Berglund's here to talk about GAMC if you want to. Otherwise, we'll try to respond to whatever questions. We are working with the House we're still on the path of providing a budget reduction, a budget cut bill in the first 3 or 4 weeks here. And we'll be working on that with the divisions next week. So.
What's your next move here in the GAMC plot here, Senator?
Well, it's a little
so we can get you on the mic. Thank you.
It's a little bit difficult to tell exactly what the next move should be because the governor keeps changing the rules, what he's saying he's got to have. Originally it was, we have to act on this very quickly at the beginning of the session, so we worked very hard to put together a proposal all through the biennium with virtually no input from the executive branch. Finally, we got some input that they didn't like the Medicaid surcharge, so we took that out. We were told that was helpful. Then we proceeded with the bill, and now, the veto message says we're spending money we don't have. Governor was doing the same thing, only he was doing it in the area of Minnesota Care. And he's saying we need to have a balanced budget before this issue can be addressed, knowing full well that February 28th, notices will go out to the counties to begin the process of auto enrollment, and the department will begin investing money in their systems to do auto enrollment of people into Minnesota Care. An action that I might say I believe violates the state law. So it's a little bit hard to know where to go now. We are obviously in discussions with the House about what the options might be.
So does that mean veto override next Monday or
No, I don't think so on Monday. I think there probably will be a veto override at some point, attempt. It's a Senate file, so the first body to move would be the Senate, so there's some timeliness issues here. But I don't think we would move on Monday. I think Senator Berglund will probably try to talk with the executive branch and see if they have any additional ideas.
You know, another thing that was in the veto message was there wasn't enough reform. Governor's proposed no reform that I can see, except to leave the vast majority of people who would be eligible for GAMC out in the street. We have reform in this bill. It reduces inpatient hospitalization for people with mental illness across our programs by 5%. That's huge. That's a huge reform.
Senator, without this GAMC bill, what impact is there on small town hospitals? We know the big ones haven't been in the regions, but what about small town hospitals?
Oh, there's a big impact on many hospitals. The Brainerd Hospital loses several millions of dollars. The Midgie Hospital loses several millions of dollars. The Mankato Hospital loses several millions of dollars. I have a list of hospitals that are affected I can get for you.
And what does this mean for jobs, setting aside the people who won't be served? What does this mean for jobs?
Well, the Hospital Association originally estimated just in the hospital sector alone that the loss of GAMC would affect about 7,000 jobs in the state.
Did you say 7,000?
I suppose, restating the obvious, the bill passed with very strong bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate. So in this instance, the governor is the outlier. And unless he comes up with some ideas that are different than what vast majority of the legislature, Democrats and Republicans, have come up with, it's not clear what we're supposed to do here. So,
are there reform options that are out there to be explored that you can tell us about?
This is a very difficult population to do reform with because many of them have been uninsured for a long period of time before they actually are seeking medical care. We did have in the bill the option for counties to create sort of an accountable care model for this population. Hennepin County was talking about modeling clinics similar to those that they've created for their HIV population. They've been very successful with reducing hospitalization with the homeless HIV population. They believe they could do a similar thing with the chronic mentally ill population.
you know, on this...
But without any funding, this isn't, of course, going to happen.
I want to point out that, again, the broad bipartisan support and the two amendments that were added on the House floor by minority members, by Republicans, both spent more money yesterday. And so it just seems ironic that there would be, perhaps that was the governor's criticism of those legislators, but to get a strong bipartisan vote out of the legislature apparently took spending more money by minority members of the House. And Senator Berglund said, okay, if that's what it takes, let's go there. So, you know, we're not quite sure what it is the governor wants to do here. So, and I think Representative Murphy has pointed out numerous times that the alternative in this bill is less cost to the state. This is the lesser cost alternative. The alternative the governor keeps focusing on costs more. So we're struggling with the inconsistency of the veto message and the facts.
We have about $30 million in our bill that helps pay for general assistance medical care that general assistance medical care actually earns for itself. If the program's gone, those earnings are gone, and those earnings are not going to be able to be replicated in Minnesota Care.
Is it federal dollars coming?
Some of it's federal, some of it's drug rebate money, some of it is other earnings that the program gets today.
So when you talk about your bill being in the $280 million amount, is that net the 30, or is that
No, that includes the 30.
Any other?
Senator Pawlenty, shifting gears, you mentioned yesterday, I think on the floor, that the bonding bill could be ready for a vote on Monday.
Right, that's our hope, yes.
And have you got any newer signals from the administration as to how they'll receive it if that loose lake money is included?
All I can work with is what the governor has privately told myself and the leadership, and we have been on a path, basically per his suggestion, that he knew we would have to have the legislature would pass a little larger bonding bill than he would support, but that he could accommodate that with line item vetoes. So I'm working off that presumption that that's the path we're on. I hope he kind of sticks with his game plan there, but, we'll find out.
So it's your intention, or the leadership's intention, to put $1 billion plus bill on his desk and let him go?
I think that to accommodate the differences between the House and the Senate, I think it will be slightly less than $1 billion, but I think that's, the governor can solve that as he has suggested he is willing to do by just line item vetoing some items. And I think that would be a good thing to proceed on and get that done. Keep in mind, the whole approach to the session this year has been premised on let's do things that we can complete, that we can agree on. The governor had suggested in December that we could agree on this approach on bonding, and we could agree on a GAMC bill. And as the time approached on the GAMC bill, the governor never would make a personal commitment. His staff kept sending positive signals, you're going in the right direction, we can get there. So we just proceeded, and I was frankly surprised that he vetoed the bill. So be it, and we'll proceed from there, and I do think there'll be an attempt to override it, and hopefully that will happen, and then we can move beyond that.
But the bonding bill will for sure on Monday, or like possible?
Well, that's the target we've given the conferees, and, nothing's totally for sure, but we're working, the speaker and I are meeting with the conferees today yet, so hopefully they can accomplish that. Pardon? Well, if they'd get it done before they go home today, they wouldn't have to work this weekend.
Do you think they can get it done before they go home today?
Yes.
Do you think they will?
I don't know.
Say, Mr. Leader, apparently next week there's going to be the Racino News Conference. I think Senator Sparks will be the chief author in your chamber.
Yeah, I'm not aware, okay.
Could you give us some kind of outlook for the Racino bill?
Well, the governor, it's been pretty consistent. The governor doesn't support it. It doesn't have votes in the legislature. So
What's the holdup there?
it doesn't have the votes, and
Why?
the governor doesn't support it. I mean,
Why doesn't it have the votes, do you think?
the governor doesn't support it, and it doesn't have the votes. I don't think enough people think it's a good idea that we should do it, so. It's really, every year it kind of keeps coming back, but it just simply doesn't have the votes. And the governor doesn't support it. I believe the governor would veto it if it did get to his desk, so I don't think we should spend a lot of time on it. The advocates are for it, and I see that, and that's fine. I just think they don't have the governor's support and they don't have the votes. So.
You mentioned in the past, and again today, that you might do a kind of a partial budget solution
Yes.
quickly, and then more cleanup work down the line. Has the governor agreed to that approach, or does he want to see the complete package before he weighs in?
Well, he said his veto letter is starting to use the words I've been using for months now: comprehensive, balanced budget solution, balanced being the key. I think it would help if he would put a balanced, or even put a complete solution on the table, which he has not. So I think trying to hold us to a standard different than he's willing to hold himself to, I don't think is a productive exercise. And I think the approach we're talking about in the legislature is, instead of having 10 budget bills, we're going to probably have perhaps 3 or 4 budget bills. But they will be complete bills in the areas that they deal with. So I don't think it should be described as an incomplete budget solution. It would be, in the areas the bills deal with, will be the complete solution for those budget areas. And we're just not going to put it all in one big bill. I think the evidence is pretty clear that if you wait till after Easter and try to do it all in one big flourish, that you're not going to be successful. And now we're finding that even doing small pieces that he supports generally, we're having trouble being successful. So I don't see how holding everything to the end makes any sense. And we don't intend to do that in the Senate, and I don't believe the House does. We intend to You know, as Henry Ford said, break a difficult task into smaller chunks, and that's what we're intending to do. And the chunks, again, would be complete solutions for those budget areas. But not all the budget areas would be in one bill, is where we're headed here.
Back to GAMC, the governor seems to be suggesting that she wants to hold the, budget balance, the budget to be balanced by whatever definition, before this bill can advance.
Okay.
How does the timing work though with
No,
the,
this bill needs to get resolved so we can move on. This bill is about a past action. We need to resolve this bill so that we can then resolve the budget. And I do believe that resolving this bill puts the governor's, even his modest solution, his incomplete solution at risk. I think that's factual. I guess if I were to surmise why he vetoed it, it's because it even lays this incomplete solution even more incomplete. But I'm not certain, but I'm just wondering if that's not what's going on here.
And the timing doesn't correlate very well. You know, we're gonna have people starting April 2nd not having coverage who need it. Hospitals having to serve people without payment. We're not gonna have a budget done by April 2nd, so. And then, of course, there is the implementation time it takes the department to be able to actually transition to whatever it's going to be.
I think one way to look at this is, we already have a general fund that's in deficit. Why would you not solve this GAMC problem and also put Minnesota Care Fund in deficit? That seems like that heads the wrong direction. Let's put more funds in deficit so that we can have a comprehensive budget solution. I think what you do is you try to avoid things going into deficit. You try to avoid cash flow problems and then try to solve the general fund deficit. And that's the point about this $120 million in shifts and transfers. What that $120 million represents is putting other parts of the budget at risk. And I don't see why that makes any sense.
And I might just add that the objections that were raised to the previous GMC bill that I had, that bill would have given us $169 million savings in the general fund toward reducing the deficit. It was the governor who said he didn't like parts of that proposal, so we took it out. Then when we take it out, then he says we haven't solved enough of the budget deficit yet. So it kind of feels like you're in a no-win situation here.
So now, this measure, is this GAMC bill ready to become law? I know you're a stickler for details. Some of it was done on the floor. Is this a good enough bill?
Yes.
So if it were implemented, it wouldn't create problems with placeholders in there?
No.
Well, I mean, look at the vote total. What is the standard for a good bill now? If it's not good enough to have that many votes bipartisanly, what is good enough? It's apparently not good enough to just have Democratic votes, okay? So now the standard is it's not good enough to have an overwhelming vote by both Democrats and Republicans? Do we have to have unanimity? So I guess the answer is absolutely it's ready for passage. Senator Berglund and Huntley and Aaron Murphy have been working on this ever since the governor suggested that a compromise solution was possible. And there's only one person that didn't stay at the table to resolve it. So, even his agency sat and worked with Senator Berglund over the last few months. So there's only one person that's not available to work on the issue, apparently.
but there's an acknowledgement that this bill represents a 16-month solution.
Yes.
And that some additional legislation would be needed going forward, right?
Next biennium, absolutely.
Well, I think there's a recognition that a governor doesn't get to veto a program. That's a statutory program and affect the next governor's budget.
I just want to go back to the point, regardless of all of that part of it, the governor says he wants to resolve this. He says it needs resolution. And it's just unclear what we're supposed to do. Do we need a unanimous vote? So, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll stay on schedule here. Again, we're just trying to proceed as a legislature to keep things moving, because we would like to go home early here. We'd like to get a balanced budget and go home early.
I guess I've been to a few with a few of the briefings with Senator Senchum, and I have not actually done them by myself, so this is the first time for me. But I will take any questions, and I guess you all know it's been a big week with the bonding bill and the GAMC, and we'll probably be dealing with the GAMC again on Monday, is my understanding. So I will probably just open it up for questions. That may be the easiest, if anyone has any.
What about GA?
There is a fix for GAMC. The governor's plan is to shift the people onto Minnesota Care. This was not necessarily a reform. There was no reform. This just shifted it for 16 months, moved it for 16 months, and in the bill that was presented, also slashed provider rates by about 50%. So that was unacceptable.
What do you make of the bipartisan vote it received?
Well, I guess there was some changes in the House that people thought were more of a change than there was. I don't know all the details over there, but in the Senate, I think you will see a pretty solid group of Republicans voting to sustain the veto.
Where do you think this issue ought to go from here?
Well, I think if there are going to be changes made, it should be part of the big budget plan, because this shifts the budget. You know, we're just starting the process for fixing this budget deficit we're in. And this takes a chunk of it out and sets it aside and doesn't put it as part of the entire budget fix. So if there is going to be changes made, that's where it needs to be. It needs to be part of that solution.
Do you agree with their approach on the bonding bill to send the governor a bill that's larger than you'd like and let him slice away at it?
I don't know if that's necessarily the way to deal with negotiations. I didn't support the bonding bill. I thought it was too large. I think obviously the governor thinks it's too large. And I don't know if that's necessarily the way to deal with negotiations and really come out with a good solution on the bonding bill.
What would you cut out?
Oh, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything specific. But I can't deny, there are good things in that bill. But I think it's also just excessive, and I think we need to take a look at it, line by line.
Is your caucus going to get behind Racino? Apparently, I think Senator Sparks is going to carry the bill in your chamber, and from what I gather, there's going to be a news conference next week.
And we haven't discussed that in caucus, so I couldn't speak to what the other folks in my district or in my caucus would be doing.
What's your view of it as one senator?
I personally have supported it in the past. I have supported gambling.
Why?
Well, I think that it's a way that we can bring funds into the state, and if we have specific things we want to run it towards, but that's not necessarily the opinion of the entire caucus. That was easy. Thank you very much.